Okay, so today I wanted to give my review of the movie Tenet. Now, I saw this movie back in September of 2020, and this was back when movie theaters were opening up at limited capacity. So it was Christopher Nolan's intention to release this big blockbuster film in order to bring audiences back to the movie theaters. But then there was that second or third wave of the you-know-what virus, which shut movie theaters down again. And then major Hollywood studios removed a lot of their films that were going to be released, like the Mulan film and the James Bond film. So, yeah, overall, I really did not like this movie. I definitely think it's one of Christopher Nolan's worst films. But then again, a bad film for Christopher Nolan is a good film by most standards. So, yeah, just because I say it's one of Christopher Nolan's worst doesn't mean necessarily it's a bad movie. It just didn't do anything for me overall. And yeah, Christopher Nolan is a very talented filmmaker, and he does have some pretty crazy ideas that are actually really cool on paper. But in this situation, it was a really cool premise, but it just didn't seem to gel all that well on the big screen. Now, I haven't seen all of Christopher Nolan's films. Some of the ones I haven't seen Memento. I never saw Insomnia. I think there's another one that kind of flew under the radar that pretty much no one has seen. I can't remember what it is, but I've seen a lot of his bigger blockbusters. I saw The Prestige. I saw the Dark Knight trilogy. I saw Inception. I saw Interstellar. I saw Dunkirk, and so. I really like a lot of Christopher Nolan's work, but then there are also a lot of films that just kind of bug me overall. I think the plots are a little too convoluted, and I don't like some of the twists and turns they take. Like The Prestige, for instance, I thought it was really cool the way it was filmed, and it was really dark, and it was a really interesting story. But I just thought some of the plot points were just too preposterous for me to really get invested, especially at the ending. But yeah, that's a discussion for another time. So let's start off with some positive things about the film. The main cast is very likable. Robert Pattinson is extremely charismatic as usual. John David Washington, who I've never seen in a film before until now, I guess he's Denzel Washington's son, is a very charismatic protagonist, and that's the only thing that he's referred to in the film. He doesn't have a name, he's just referred to as the protagonist. And he does a very good job in this film. I think all of the actors overall are a little wooden just because the script doesn't give them a lot of time to show any emotions. They all just kind of explain what they're going to do, but I think just given the script that they had, they all seemed to be very good choices for the cast. Some of the visual effects were also really cool. So the premise of this film is that there are people in the future that have developed a technology that allows them to reverse the entropy of objects and people and essentially send them backwards in time. And so there are a lot of cool action scenes where people are moving backwards in time, but like they're moving, the perspective of the movie is we're following these people moving in regular time, but everything around them is moving backwards. And so you'll see firefighters trying to put out a fire, and the fire is moving backwards, and the water is being sucked back into the hose. And in the finale of the film, they have some cool scenes where buildings are exploding and then imploding and being blown apart and then remade again, backwards and forwards in time. And so there are some pretty cool opportunities for some groundbreaking visual effects. Now let's talk about some of my issues with the film. Number one, the storyline is so convoluted and bogged down with very uninteresting subplots. I described the premise a little bit, and it's just such a cool idea. The idea that there are people from the future that have developed this technology, and we're starting to receive this technology bit by bit, and you just think about like, such a cool mystery, like who are these people and why are they sending this technology back, and what are the implications of being able to travel back in time? And we never really get to explore those deep questions or this broad premise. Instead, we have these long, drawn-out subplots, like the bad guy's wife is an abused wife who can't see her son, and she's an art collector, and she has counterfeit art, and the good guy is trying to get an audience with her by giving her the real version of the art and breaking into the art storage place and to switch the artwork, and then so that he can meet with her husband, who's a plutonium collector, and he pretends to be a plutonium guy, and he pretends to have an affair with his wife, and it's just, I don't know, just a lot of stuff that I just did not care about. And I just thought it was so weird that you just take this cool premise and just bog it down with such pointless storylines. Another thing that bugged me with the plot in general is that it's moving so fast and so much information is being thrown at you, and the main characters are speaking so quickly. There is never a time where you're able to just sit back and take it all in, and there are no pauses between the conversations. There are no I don't know, no time for the audience to rest. You have to just be consuming this information. And so, I'd finally grasp something, and then 2 minutes later after it happened, but by then we've already moved 2 or 3 scenes away from what happened before, and I'm trying to play catch up. And I have sat down with people, I sat down with the family members that I saw it with, and I'm just like, what happened in that movie? I have no idea what the storyline was. And we debated back and forth, trying to decide what the point of the movie was and what the bad guy's plan was. His plan had something to do with putting a bomb down a hole which would cause the world to explode, and because he was dying, and if he was going to die, he wanted to take the world with him. And for some reason, they couldn't kill him because that would end the world, but they killed him anyway at the end. So I have no idea what was going on in this movie. The final issue I'm going to discuss now, I had mentioned that there were a lot of really cool visual effects, but at the same time, the novelty of these visual effects wore off very quickly. It was really cool to see people moving in normal time and seeing everything around them moving backwards in time, but this became very tiresome, especially in the finale battle scene. In my opinion, this battle scene was a total mess and was a really big missed opportunity. The thing that bugged me most about this battle scene is that, it was cool to see all of these explosions turning into implosions and seeing buildings be blown apart and then being put back together again. But at the same time, you couldn't really tell what was happening. Because the storyline suggests that if you're moving backwards in time, you need to be wearing an oxygen mask because the oxygen can't get to your lungs. It needs to be forced in through a mask for some reason. And so every single person that's participating in this final battle is wearing a mask, so you can't tell who is who. Instead of following a specific group of people, we just have a bunch of random action shots with a bunch of faceless protagonists. We have no idea who is who or what is going on. It's just one scene of a bunch of people shooting at an empty building and an explosion happening, and then another scene of another random group of people shooting at an empty building, and then the explosion reverses, there's an implosion, and then it's another random scene of another guy shooting his gun backwards, and then it's another random scene. It's just a whole hodgepodge of a bunch of random scenes, and you don't get any sense of whether the bad guys are winning or the good guys are winning, or whether they're getting closer to reaching their goal. It's just all over the place. The thing that really bugged me about this final scene was that you couldn't see a single bad guy that they were shooting at. At least I don't think that they showed a single bad guy. They just show the main henchman who's setting the bomb up to be thrown into the hole to blow up the earth. But other than that, all of the camera shots are on the ground showing these, half of the team moving backwards in time and half of the team moving forwards in time. They're doing some kind of time pincer move, which I don't really understand. And you see muzzle flashes coming from windows in these empty buildings. And you see the good guys shooting at these empty buildings. And you see explosions happening around the good guys, but you don't see a single villain. Typically, when you film a battle scene like this, you have the main goal, and you want your protagonist to eventually, to try and reach their main goal, which is to prevent the bad guy from blowing up the hole. But then you typically follow a smaller group of people that have smaller objectives. For example, they could be pinned down and like, there's a guy in the tower, he's got a machine gun, we can't advance. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to, half of you go reverse in time and half of you go forwards in time, and we're going to meet in the center. We got to take that tower out. And then it'll show a shot inside the tower, and you'll see the bad guy hosing them down with his minigun, and then you'll see another guy in the tower who's moving in reverse time, and he's sucking bullets back into his gun. And then one of the characters that you saw who made a joke, and you're like, oh, he seems like a funny guy. He gets up and he gets shot. And they're like, no! And then eventually they make their way up to the tower, and then half of them are shooting sucking bullets back into their guns, and half of them are shooting them out, and then the tower explodes, and then the good guys accomplish their little objective, and you're like, oh, that's good. The random guy that we saw at the beginning of the movie, had his moment to shine. There was nothing like that in this final scene. Again, I said before, they're all wearing masks, and so you can't tell who is who. There were 2 awesome money shots in this movie and they both happen in the finale, so definitely give Christopher Nolan some credit. I would much rather just watch these scenes on YouTube than sit through the movie again. But there's a really cool scene where 2 guys are, shooting at an empty building, and one of them is standing over a bunch of rubble, and his partner, who's a few feet ahead of him, turns around and he sees that the rubble is starting to shake and starting to move, and he's like, look out! And then the rubble gets sucked back up into a wall, and it and it just knocks the guy backwards, presumably killing him. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I wanted to see more stuff like that. But, those cool scenes were few and far between. And then there's a really cool scene where the guys that are moving forwards in time in the final battle are looking at this tower that's been blown up at the base. So just the top is intact over a pile of rubble, and they have their watches synced up with the people that are moving backwards in time, and it shows their watches count down at the same time. And so they both shoot their missiles at this tower, and so the tower shoots up and gets put back together, and then as soon as it gets put back together, the top ends up exploding. And you really have to look this scene. If you haven't seen the movie, you really need to. I mean, if you have to sit through the whole movie, do it, but you should look it up on YouTube. It's a really cool visual effect. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on Tenet. It was just way too confusing for me to follow, and it really took away from a lot of the suspense. It was just bogged down by so many pointless subplots. And the finale scene was really disappointing. It was incoherent, and the visual effects, the potential for having such cool visual effects was really wasted. So yeah, if you think I'm wrong, tell me why in the comments, and I will catch you next time.